What's up, Joe? We're back at the Lab 2.0. How are you?
Very well, very well, very well. How was your week?
It was pretty good. I mean, action-packed and fun-filled. It was my girlfriend's birthday. It was Valentine's Day. Met 2 new clients and had a tour with both of them.
Good.
So overall, quite busy.
Quite busy. How was your response going to see these units? Is it busier? Is it quieter?
Yeah, you know what? There was quite a few people at the open house that we went to. I also hosted 2 for the brokerage, and there were at least like 7 groups both days. And this product type is like 3 million plus. So seems like people are looking, and not just the people that are looking at entry-level properties.
No, interesting. Yeah, no, it's the same on my side as well. It definitely, I think we're shooting this the 2nd week of February, so we'll probably have this release on the 3rd week of February, but we don't want to get too much into the market. That's what market update is for. But within this last couple of weeks, we definitely felt like there was a sharp increase in terms of activities in regards to people going to look at homes coming to the market and what have you. So it seems like we are kind of turning the corner, which kind of also makes sense. I was looking at some data. Generally in Vancouver, every time our real estate market goes through a downturn, it doesn't go more than like 8 to 10 months. And considering that the peak of the market was last year in April, we're in February time, we're right around there. So of course, it'll be interesting to monitor what happens in the next couple of weeks, but we feel like we're definitely turning the corners. Is not as crazy or negative as what we experienced basically in the last fall market.
100% not. There's a shift. And I mean, the goal of today's podcast is like we're going to condense all of the recent policy changes implemented in the last couple months, just to make it a little bit more digestible for our listeners.
Yes.
And of course, if we want to do a deeper dive into any of these, feel free to reach out to us. But we're going to try to keep this as concise as possible, share our opinion, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, especially now with some of these policies, there's about 2 to 3 months that has kind of run its course, and we just wanted to share with people kind of what we are seeing on the field. So why don't you get started?
Sounds good.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll get started with the big one, which is the home buyer rescission period, or the cooling off period, as it is also introduced. I remember talking about this from the beginning stages. I mean, 4 or 5 months ago, there was a lot of question marks, let's just say, that we had, and I'm glad that it seems like there's been a lot more clarity about the HBRP. So now the buyer has 3 days from the accepted offer date to rescind from the offer. Now, of course, there will be a penalty applied to that, which is 0.25% of the purchase price, which the seller will be owed to. Now, if there was a deposit paid at the time of accepted offer, which Joe and I suggest is a best practice if you guys are sellers, is to require there to be a deposit paid within 24 hours. Reason being, if there was a deposit paid, then that rescission amount of the 0.25% will be automatically deducted before the deposit is returned to the buyer.
Right.
If there is no deposit in hand, that means that you as a seller will have to seek your own legal advice, whether it be small claims court or whatever, to try and get that 0.25% back. It seems like a lot of work for what might not be a lot of money. So we highly suggest that you do that. A couple more things to note is that it cannot be waived.
Yes. And there's a couple of exceptions.
There are a couple of exceptions, and the exceptions are with leasehold properties, properties that are sold at an auction, properties that are sold under a court-ordered
quarter sale.
A court-ordered sale.
Yeah.
And pre-sales, which of course they're protected by REDMA, where you have a 7-day rescission period instead of the 3 days. And also this does not apply to commercial properties.
Right.
In terms of the communication, there are 2 new sections that will highlight what the cooling off period is. Number 1 will be on your DORT, which is a disclosure of representation in trade. And number 2 will be the standard contract of purchase and sale. If you're not using a standard contract purchase and sale, there's another disclosure form, but I think 99% of the time we are using one of those forms. So please make sure that you review it with your realtor and that you fully understand what this means for you as a buyer and as a seller.
Yes.
Another thing is with backup offers. So when does the rescission period start with backup offers? Well, it actually starts immediately after the offer is accepted. There are a couple of scenarios where this can be a little bit tricky. Which is why, again, communication between agents is extremely, extremely important.
Right. And there's one thing that also we got a little bit more clarity on is when there's two buyers on the contract. And apparently you don't need both buyers to rescind. You just need one party to rescind.
Now, you can imagine the potential chaos that can cause. Let's say Joe and I are looking at an investment property together. I get cold feet. I don't even tell the agent. I tell the seller directly, or seller's agent directly, that, hey, I don't want to go through with this anymore. Here's my right of rescission in writing. See you later.
I can see so many things that's wrong with that. Who's paying for the 0.25 because you wanted to rescind, I don't want to rescind. And honestly, like, what happens if it was an ugly situation where not every party was informed? So as the buying agent or as the other party, we thought this deal was going to go through, but in reality, it didn't go through. And this is especially apparent if the listing agent and the buyer agent don't have any communication on it whatsoever. So I like the way that you brought it up. With this new policy, I feel like communication is now key throughout. Like client to realtors, realtors to realtors, realtors back to their clients. Let's just take that backup offer, for example, the situation. So the backup offer, if you submitted it, most of the time is subject free. If you go in, your rescission period starts. Now, as a listing agent, do you tell the first buyer that you now have a backup offer? If you do, and they go, what? No, I don't want this, right? And then they get cold feet or whatever, or you give them way too much pressure, they just leave. And then the backup offer people decide to rescind. Well, you just went from 2 offers to no offers. Or do you wait until the 3-day rescission period is over for the backup offer to tell the current buyer? But the problem is, if you do that, what happens if they're supposed to remove subjects within this 3 days anyways? So you actually didn't really inform the first buyer that you had a backup offer. You can see where this gets a little bit murky, and what are you really supposed to do around this situation?
I mean, the first thing that I would think of as the listing agent is that of my duty to disclose to my client first. So I think we would make a decision together on what the best steps would be moving forward. To me, I think I would probably inform them ASAP.
Yeah. Now we have about 2 months now. Well, actually, it's more like 1.5 months to run this through. Have you seen any examples of people actually exercising this rescission period?
Yeah, actually, I had a client who was interested in putting an offer on a place in Richmond. We didn't get it, so we went into multiples. Then 2 days later, the agent messaged me and said, hey, you know what? The buyer with the accepted offer, they're exercising their right of rescission. They're going to pay that 0.25% penalty. Reason being, they were unaware of the satellite empty home vacancy clause or speculation clause, and they did not want to have to pay that.
Yeah.
So that's my first example. There was another one of a fellow agent at the brokerage, but I have started to see a little bit of it. Not as much as I originally thought, but also definitely not as little.
Right, and that's kind of where I want to pick up where you left off, is that initially when they introduced this, I was all over the place. You know, even through the podcast, you can kind of hear. Initially, I thought, oh my God, this is horrible. Everybody's going to do this. And then I had some time to really think about it. I'm like, who's really going to be doing this anyways? 0.25 plus, you know, it's if you're going to have subjects, it runs concurrently with the subject. Like, how many times is this actually going to come up? Probably not a lot, right? Especially because when I was really thinking about it, the market was relatively slow. Now that we have about a month and a half, and we are also in a slightly changing market, we feel like it's not as little as I thought, but it's not as much as I initially thought either. It's just somewhere in the middle, and I feel like this is just something that people need to be aware of, but people don't have to be like super scared or super anxious about either, because when someone that does want to do this, there's obviously a very good reasons why. Now, if the market continues to go super high and every single one goes into multiple offers, then I'm not 100% sure if people are going to utilize this. Similar like to what we talked about last time. A really rich parent, buy. Yeah, I don't want this one, I don't want this one, I don't want this one, I don't want this one. Let it go, and then just buy the last one. It'll be interesting to continue monitoring, but so far, not as bad as I thought.
I mean, this is another reason why we always say like choosing an agent is extremely, extremely important, and is the first step out of the 10 when you're looking to buying a property. You want to make sure that someone's knowledgeable, they're going to protect you and your best interest.
Right. Yes. So for the time being, I think it's I think every if you any consumer that you're listening, you definitely want to just to kind of bring this up for conversation with your realtor, regardless if you want to buy or you want to sell, just so that you have a better understanding about your rights as well in regards to this, or some of the things that you've got to be careful of. Moving on to the second thing, ban on rental strata. This is not the flip of the calendar year. This has been running for about 3 months. 3 months now. If you don't really know what this is, all the rental restrictions in BC has been removed. The only one that can stay is literally no short term and 55 plus buildings.
What's considered short term?
Short term, I think, is minimum in Vancouver is less than 30 days.
Got it.
And I think different city, they have different rules in regards to that as well. This also really, sorry, when I say removal of rental restrictions, I'm not talking about you can rent or you cannot rent. It also talks about how many units you can rent within that complex as well. So I think in your particular townhouses, before there was 6 rentals allowed. Now, obviously, I'm assuming with the new rule, kind of everything is just all.
Yeah, I remember hearing about some other owners that would rent out their units like kind of under the table. But as soon as this legislation was passed, and some people are still not aware actually until I shared it with them, but they're definitely very happy.
Oh yeah, no, I think with the ban of rental restrictions, once again, I think we talked about this in the previous podcast. I think it was David Abbey episode. I don't feel like it's helping the people that needs to be helped. Once again, I still feel like that's true. First-time home buyers and also retirees who just has more time and they want their complex to be really, really well taken care of. Right? Because what I'm seeing is with first-time home buyers, with kind of the no rental restriction, all the investors are going to start going in and start buying, and the prices are going to come up. This is actually has already happened to one of my clients who's a first-time home buyer. There was a section, a little pocket area in Burnaby that there was rental restrictions, no rentals was allowed. They removed all of that, and now that we did kind of see that price starting to go up. So it became a community to where that it was initially within their budget. Now it's not really in her budget anymore.
I'm not gonna lie, I had the exact same situation on the flip side of where I'm representing some investors and we targeted specifically those units that had rental restrictions in the past because we knew that they were priced below market value prior to the legislation being passed.
Right. Now, on the flip side, I'm also not saying that change in evaluation has changed overnight. No, I think it's a slower scale. Maybe the market has to deal with it because we really just don't have that much investor clients out there right now because of the high interest rate and what have you. But we are starting to see that little uptick. Right. Initially, I thought remove, bam, like evaluation just goes up like overnight.
If this was 2021, absolutely, I think that would happen.
I think that I agree with you. I think that's what might have happened. Right. So thank God it's not. But as kind of the market started to once again heat up again, it will be interesting to kind of hold on to see these kind of rental restriction building to see how quickly the prices come up. But on the flip side though, I do want to quickly talk about, because I did read an article 2 days ago or yesterday in regards to some of this rental 55 plus restrictions actually impacting some of the purchasers. I think you sent it to me.
Yes, I believe this story was happened in Maple Ridge. So this building previously was a 19 plus.
19 plus.
So once it opened up, there was a purchaser who bought it, got pregnant, and then the Strata decided to get together and vote for passing a bylaw to make it a 55 plus building. And at the time, this individual was interviewed and she voiced her concern about like, hey, I'm going to have a baby. And someone at the meeting told her, well, you better put your property up for sale.
Interesting, because thanks for sharing that article, because I also did a kind of like a evaluation for another building in White Rock. They had a 45 plus, but when they were getting together to say, should we move it to 55 plus, there was a big chunk of people that's actually within that 45 to 55. So instead of boosting up to 55 plus, they actually just, forget it, let's just open it up to everybody, with obviously the hope that people won't rent it to teenagers and what have you and just completely bust out the place. So it's interesting because I'm hearing more of my side of the story because a lot of the strategists just go, forget it. Especially with the ones with the age restriction. Very little do I hear your side of the story, but it does cause a lot of issue, I can imagine, if a strategist decides to take it down that route.
Yeah, it was literally the first story I've come across, which is probably why it made it to the news. And we're not going to go into like the moral and ethical dilemma of like a strata council deciding something like that. But again, it stresses the importance of making sure that your agent, when you're being represented as a buyer, that they really do a deep dive into the strata documents. And now there's another layer of it of figuring out, okay, do they have any plans of making this into a 55 plus building?
Right. So I think, obviously, whatever has passed with that individual. I feel really bad for her. But I think one initial thing maybe they could have done is just call up the strata president or call up the strata manager. Hey, I'm thinking about buying this. I know you guys used to have a 19 plus. Is there any plan of implementing a 55 plus? And then see what the manager says.
Get it in writing if that's possible.
Exactly, right? So I think that would really help because a lot of people, I think what must have happened is that a couple of assumptions was made. Oh, how do you go from 19 plus to go 55 plus? Right? But you just never know. Oh, what is this? With that, party foul.
Party foul.
I would let you go through the next thing.
All right, so the next one we have here is a little bit of a big one. It's the FHSA, or First Home Savings Account.
There's so many, RSP, TFSA, there's so many of these things.
Another piece of legislation that's, I think, meant to help first-time home buyers purchase a home. So this is a new type of account. You have to be 18 years of age to qualify to open one, and you cannot have bought a home within the last 4 years. And there's a couple other stipulations that we'll go over, but basically this is a hybrid between a TFSA account and an RSP account. The great thing about it is that all the money that you put into this FHSA account is non-taxable, so you can invest in ETFs, GICs, mutual funds, stocks, etc., and when you take this money out, it's non-taxable. Similarly to an RSP account, any money that you put in is tax deductible, which is awesome. Now, here's where we get to a point where I kind of like, I'm not sure if this is like how I would have done it or if it is truly helping. Number one, your annual contribution room is only $8,000. Number two, your maximum contribution over a span of 15 years is $40,000.
Okay.
Now, let's do a little bit of math here. 20% down at $40,000 means you're buying a $200,000 home. Joe, do you know anywhere that you can buy a place for $200K?
I want to say leasehold, but leasehold can't even do it because leasehold requires 35% down for most banks.
Exactly. What happens if these funds aren't used within 15 years because you find that, oh, even after 15 years, I cannot save enough money. I still don't have enough money for a down payment. Well, your account is closed and you can transfer the funds to your RSP. I mean, this is better than the home buyer's plan because you don't have to repay it, which I like. But again, the contribution room, not only that I have a problem with, but also your contribution cannot be carried forward, your unused contribution, I should say, unlike a TFSA account. So if you don't put that $8,000 in the first year, you cannot put the remainder into your second year. So if you do $4,000 your first year and you do $8,000 your second year, you cannot up that $8,000 to $12,000. You're gonna have to carry it on to the next year and the next year and the next year to get back that same amount.
And that's where I see the problem. I totally agree with you. I wrote right here, too little per year and too little as a max. Right? So it's just, once again, it's like, okay, 50,000 down payment. I mean, as a
40,
total,
sorry.
40 as your total, 8,000 per year for 5 years. First of all, your real estate, whatever parcel of real estate that you were thinking about to buy, probably went up more than that during the time you're trying to save this. And second of all is like exactly what you said. What is 40,000 gonna do for people, right? But I did kind of catch you says that any investment that you make in this account is going to be tax-free. Okay, let's just take I'm just doing some simple math right now. 1 bedroom, downtown, not even a fancy one, let's just say a standard one, small one, older one, 600,000. You need 20%, 120,000. You have 40,000 here after 5 years. you still need to triple that money, 3x that money, just so that you have a down payment for 1 bedroom in Vancouver.
In today's
market.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm a first time home buyer, what am I going to do? And please, if you're a first time home buyer, don't take this advice. I'm really just taking an example.
Yeah, we want to put it bold, red, underlined in this edit. This is what you do not do.
Yeah. But if I was in that situation and I don't have the bank of mom and dad, I'm gonna go big. Go big or go home is what we always like to say when we're younger, right? So I'd rather just go big. I'm gonna take the most riskiest stock that I could possibly find to try to 3x this money so I can actually afford something within this policy.
So you're buying XYZ mining company, you're buying Ethereum, some random Bitcoin or whatever.
Exactly, right? Because I understand that my Shaw or my Rogers or my big blue box companies ain't gonna 3x my money. You're lucky to get a dividend that's like 0.1% sometimes. And how are you ever gonna save up to that money because you're always behind?
I mean, the only condition is if something like COVID and lockdown happens again.
It's true.
Which, knock on wood, we hope never happens again in our lifetime.
Hey, nice knocking. Coffee, stop it. Coffee, no, there's nobody there. Stop it. So with that being said, it's like, yeah, so what this really is, you're asking the first time home buyers or the young people to really be risky about everything that like they put into this account in order to make it worthwhile for anything. And not being able to carry over, that's something that I just wanted to quickly talk about. That really sucks because we're both realtors. I've been in a commission like environment ever since in my teens. And I understand that for commission sales or self-employed, you get good years and you get bad years. If you're a realtor in 2021, you probably want to throw more than $8,000 into this account, no matter what kind of realtor you are, as long as you're kind of in the market, you're doing deals. But in comparison to like a market in 2018, assuming that this was around, you might not have $8,000 because it was a tough year. Right? So not being able to carry over was one thing that I was just kind of like, what? Why? Right? At least if you're able to carry over, then as a commission sales such as myself, then I'd be like, okay, if I didn't make this much money this year, I get to cough up 16 grand next year into this account when the market gets better. But not being able to carry over with this amount, I just, I feel like you're not really helping as much as what you want. Ultimately, I feel like this whole account is really for grabbing votes. I'm sorry to hate it. I hate to kind of get into politics. They're just writing something, implementing something that it looks really good on paper. But if you dive a little bit deeper into it, you're like, what is this for? Like,
I mean,
who
let's
is this
just
for?
run a scenario through. Imagine being 20 years old. You have a dream of buying a home. You start saving. Now you're 35. You think that $40,000 is going to get you a home. You start looking at homes and you realize that, holy crap, a 1-bedroom condo anywhere is minimum $600,000-$700,000.
So you're like, what did I just do all of that for? Time to buy some Bitcoins, right? Trying to link everything together, right? Like I said, it's great that they're implementing. There's definitely some positive over it. Through the details. I just feel like the number doesn't make sense. The contribution doesn't make sense, at least in a Vancouver market. Once again, if you're in some other maybe rural towns that doesn't have such expensive real estate, yeah, this could be very, very helpful. But I just in Vancouver, I just like, what does this actually do for people? And this is one of the few things that, yes, people talk about it, and then after hearing what it's all about, they just go, and then they just kind of move on to the next thing. Right? Which then, of course, link onto the next thing I want to talk about that some people might just move on to the next thing. This is the one that most people have been reading on public news medias or any sort of
it's kind of been the talk of the town for a little bit.
For a little bit now. I think it just recently kind of died down and people kind of forgot about it, which is the ban for foreign buyers and by foreign companies as well. Introduced by Justin Trudeau throughout Canada. This is not a BC thing. He implemented a 2-year ban for anyone that's not a PR or not a Canadian citizen or not a Canadian company. There are some exceptions to this, recreational properties such as cottages and cabins, residential real estate outside of cities with a population less than 100,000 people, international students on the path of having PR, some restrictions apply, of course, refugees, people on a specific work visa, and spouses and common law partners of Canadian citizens. Right? First thing I think about when I'm thinking about this is how many loopholes that we kind of just reopen up.
Let's go over it. I mean, number one would be, I feel like for the last decade, we have been hearing about, UBC student on a student visa owns $10 million property on the west side. That has been a headline similar to that has been common, I say, for the last 10 years,
right.
Number one. Number two, spouse or common law. What does that tell you?
I don't know. Are you ready to sell your passport?
Yeah, the amount of fake marriages that we might see coming up in the next couple of years might skyrocket. What other loopholes were there?
People on a work visa, refugees, right? And I guess cabins and cottages, but I would probably want to read a little bit more into that, or what considers cottages and cabins for sure. Right?
Not only that, but there was also a ban on commercial properties too.
Right, commercials.
Now,
let me put it this way. Since we're talking about commercials, I feel like the commercial ban, it's a bigger impact than residential bans for I guess foreigners to buy. The reason why is because I know for a fact that a lot of these foreign companies loves to buy the Okanagan's vineyards. They love buying, apparently they love drinking red wine, or they love grape. The second of all is all the farmlands in the prairies. Right? A lot of them are just buying farmlands, almost monopolizing it, and they're willing to pay. There's a whole documentary of this on TV. Like they're willing to pay way over market value just to own the farmland, and then they'll get whoever the original owner of that farmland is to continue working. So turning them from an owner into a staff. Right? So I feel like this will really kind of stop that purchases from happening going forward, aside from the loopholes. That obviously that depending on how lucrative things are, because money talks, right?
Of course,
yeah,
always.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Now let's zoom in a little bit and talk about our market, which is Vancouver, which is residential. That's what we deal with. I feel like this whole foreign buyer ban isn't going to impact too much because we always had the 20% foreign buyer tax that was there.
That stopped people from buying? I don't think so. The real estate market just got even hotter.
Well, no, the thing is, it's not the foreigners that's buying, right? The 20% foreign buyer tax really emphasized to kind of at least realtors that's on the field and a lot of other people is that it's not foreign money. Like actually, the amount of foreign money that we have using foreign money to buy real estate in Vancouver is minuscule. I think I read articles like anywhere between 3 to 5% of the total market.
I mean, that's what they say on paper, but then if you want to keep going into the money laundering and whatnot, like there's just very difficult to be able to get an accurate data on how much money is actually foreign money and how much of it is Canadian, I quote.
Yeah. And then that's another thing is we're also opening up immigration, so actually getting PR and everything is a lot easier. So I see the benefit of it, I really do. I just don't feel like it's going to be as impactful as a lot of people might think or might read on the news because we're just not, especially in the market that we're in.
Do you agree that we can say that it is great in theory, but in practicality, it's...
Yes and no, because today, if we are a realtor in Okanagan selling vineyards, it's a huge impact to us.
Yes. Correct.
Or we sell farmlands in Manitoba, in Saskatchewan, huge impact to us. But I feel like the reason why we say it might not have so much impact is because our business is really already kind of where all the foreigners didn't want to buy it, or foreign entities that want to buy here anyways because of the 20% foreign
Thank God I don't live in the prairies and work there.
But since we're talking about that, why don't you take over the next one?
So there's another new piece of legislation about anti-flipping. This is meant to target people who are using their primary resident rule to flip properties. I remember, Joe, when we first talked about it, we were kind of concerned about a specific group of people that this would affect, and those are the renovators, the people that are bought and to renovate. Now, for people who buy and sell residential property and sell it within a 12 months period, they will be taxed fully as business income, and they will no longer be able to be sheltered for the 50% capital gains rate if they were renting it out. There are some exemptions, which these I agree with. Household additions like birth, adoption, or if you're caring for an elderly parent. If, sadly, there's a breakdown in marriage or a common law partnership, if there's a threat of personal safety, such as domestic violence, if there's a change in employment, let's say someone got hired and they have to relocate, and also involuntary disposition, like a natural or human-made disaster, or human-caused disaster, I should say. This one I'm a little bit question mark around, like, if there's a natural disaster and let's say this townhouse gets destroyed in an earthquake, well,
how can the value continue to go up?
How would you sell this? I don't really know, but it's great that they thought of it, I guess.
No, I think on my side of it is, remember when we were doing this podcast last year in regards to, oh my God, like we spent like a good 20 minutes talking about like real business models of people buying older cars.
Yeah, they're penalizing the entrepreneur, which is like the whole idea of the American dream of like coming and starting your business. Like that to me is a business.
Yeah.
They're not house flippers.
Yeah.
They're taking on the stress and risk of buying a home that might not be in the greatest shape, living in it. And we have that example of you had a client who was like literally living with rats while they're renovating.
Right.
And I can't even begin to think about the mental stress that would cause me if that was me. And then you're going to tell them that like, hey, you're going to be taxed because you went through that?
Yeah.
That doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah.
Versus the Susie seller who is like bought a home. Oh, wow, my home went up in $200K in 1 year or in 8 months. Okay, I'm going to sell it now.
Yeah.
Those are the people that I definitely feel like should get taxed.
Yes.
And I'm very happy to see that it seems like this policy is my favorite.
Yes.
In how it's executed and how it's presented.
That's right. That's right. Because initially, you remember we thought that there was going to be extra penalties on top of, whatever business considered as business income. But good thing that they didn't do that. And honestly, I do feel like personally that if you were to buy real estate and then sell it within 12 months for your investment property or for your primary, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Why are you, buying and selling so frequently, right? So unless obviously you're an investor, a professional investor, and then you're in it to make a living. Then of course, if that's for you to make a living, then it should be considered business income. So overall, I'm for this one.
I'm 2 thumbs up for this one too, which I'm happy to say.
Yeah, and then once again, not taking away the people that do renovation as a business model. It's great because I really feel like penalizing that particular group just makes no sense to me whatsoever at all. Yeah. So, all right, that will move us to the last one here, which is the multi-generational home renovation tax credit. That's a mouthful. Long story short, it covers eligible homeowners up to 15% or max of $7,500 for creating a secondary unit in their home to accommodate a senior or adult with disability.
Wow, $7,500.
That's my first thing, $7,500 to create a secondary unit. I'm just thinking about renovation costs. I think that is just enough for you to put a drywall, maybe 2 drywalls, a door, a new flooring, and that's pretty much about it. Or maybe a closet.
I was quoted a bathroom renovation for $17,000 to do a bathroom. Renovation, not building a new one.
Yeah.
And here we're talking about building a suite.
Yeah. So, especially for a senior or an adult with disability. So I'm assuming that you probably want to be closer towards the washroom and you don't want to literally just build a unit, a suite for them and then just, this is your room now. Where's the washroom? Where's everything? Like, no, it's not like that. Right? So, and I know that a handicap accessible washroom is even more expensive than a regular washroom. So you're absolutely right. I'm currently doing a rental project and we were quoted just to renovate a washroom, literally pull out the bathtub, pull out the toilet, pull out the vanities, the sinks, the mirrors, and put in tiles and put in new ones. We're already quoted $12,000 per washroom. And they're not like fancy washroom. They're just your standard, like a tub, a toilet, and a 1 sink mirror kind of thing. That's already like $12,000. So I'm like, the first thing I thought was $7,500. What is that? Right? And then and then you gotta understand that washroom piping is already in place. Imagine you're trying to create a bathroom where the piping is not even in place yet. Well, the 7500 is literally gonna just scratch the surface. Right. So, but on the flip side, I'm not gonna bitch and complain. This helps. It does help.
Better than nothing, I think, would be the correct term for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing. Right. So, before we conclude the podcast, and this is unscripted, you can see Jeff's face. There's one more I want to quickly talk about. I just want to get your opinion. For the city of Vancouver, I don't know if you heard about this one. A 33 by 122 lot, you can build up to 6 units on it now. Have you heard about this one?
Yes.
Okay, what do you think about it?
It's about to get really cramped.
You don't like how every single house is going to be like a sixplex?
It's a Vancouver special time, like on crack.
Times 2, basically. Honestly, once again, I think for this one, my thought is, once again, how long is the permit? I would love to see someone actually do it. I just want to see how big each individual home gonna be, or unit, gonna be on a 33 by 122 lot. I'm thinking a duplex, maybe with 2 basement suites, and then a coach home that's split into 2. I really can't even think how it could be any different.
I don't know the full rules around that, but like, can they build a coach home?
Yeah, I think so. As long as, or laneway home, as long as your backyard is in a specific distance.
Who
which
knows,
I know
man?
that.
Maybe they're gonna make like a 2-level laneway home and then like have 2 separate entrances there. Who knows? Maybe we're gonna start being like Taiwan, like on our last episode, and it's just gonna be free for all.
Free for all. Hey, I personally think that it will help. But the practicality of how much is it gonna cost? What is the permit period? How big each unit is? I'm just thinking like, what is this? 6 2-bedroom units? Probably not even. It's probably like 6. Some of them are 2 bedrooms and some of them are 1 bedroom at most. But that's something that is quite interesting that I just wanted to bring up.
All right, guys, it's crowdfunding time. So Joe's going to take on this project if there's enough interest. If you want to invest in a project like this, please contact Joe directly. He'll get his builder's license, find an architect, and we'll see where it goes.
I'll do everything from scratch. Right? But that's pretty much it. I mean, the reason why I want to bring up this podcast, just to quickly conclude, is because this is definitely a lot for real estate industry from one year going to another. It's quite a bit of changes, and with these changes, sometimes it takes time for people to adapt and stuff like that. When you throw that much into it, it'll definitely confuse some people for sure, right? So it's good that we kind of have some opportunity to quickly run through it. If you guys have any questions with any specific one that we talked about, or you want some sort of further clarity, we don't want to gain too much for every single one. Get in touch with us. You have our email or you have our number. Just give us a quick call. All right. With that being said, thank you guys so much. This will conclude this week's podcast.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment.
All right.
Help us with the algorithm.
Yes, and we are the Mike for Vancouver Real Estate. I'm Joe.
I'm Jeff.
And thank you guys so much. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye now.